Okay, let's kick off this explainer with a wild story about a 9th century Ethiopian goat herder named Kaldi. As the legend goes, Kaldi noticed his typically calm goats going absolutely bonkers. Jumping around, full of energy, completely refusing to sleep. So what were they eating? Little red berries off a nearby tree. Kaldi decided to try these berries himself, got that exact same buzzing energy, and shared his discovery with a group of local monks. Those monks started crushing the berries into a drink to help them pray through the night without passing out. And literally just like that, because some hyperactive goats couldn't chill, the very first coffee beans were discovered. Welcome to the show. Today, we're breaking down everything you need to know about the coffee bean.
To keep things completely beginner-friendly, we're breaking the vast coffee universe into 5 quick buckets. The big 2 coffee giants, the rare underdog beans, stolen seeds and mutations, the premium coffee world, and finally, spotting big coffee scams. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The big 2 coffee giants.
Now, it is actually staggering to think about, but a massive 98% of the entire coffee world comes down to just 2 dominant species. Arabica takes the crown at roughly 60%, followed closely by Robusta at about 38%. That tiny, almost invisible 2% sliver left over, that belongs to the rare Liberica and Excelsa beans, which we'll definitely get to in a minute. But first, why do Arabica and Robusta have such a massive stranglehold on our mornings?
Well, the contrast between these 2 giants is pretty stark. Think of Arabica as the fragile, smooth talker at the party. It has about 1.5% caffeine, packs way more natural sugars and fats, and delivers a really smooth, rich flavor completely devoid of harsh bitterness. But man, it's delicate. Bad weather or a few bugs can easily wipe out a whole crop. It demands high altitudes and careful shading. Robusta, on the other hand, that's the tough guy kicking down the door. It boasts almost double the caffeine at 2.7%, giving it the strong, earthy, and almost burnt, bitter taste. It grows huge, resists disease, and genuinely doesn't care about bad soil or low altitudes. It's virtually indestructible. And here's a fun fact for you. Because it's cheaper and produces a really thick crema, Robusta is almost certainly the instant coffee or espresso blend sitting in your pantry right now.
Section 2. The rare underdog beans.
We actually have to look at the Philippines to understand the Liberica bean. Back in the 1890s, this devastating disease called coffee rust was wiping out Arabica farms across Southeast Asia. Entire economies were collapsing. But the Philippines stepped in with Liberica, this massive almond-shaped bean from a plant that completely thrives in hot, humid weather. Almost overnight, the Philippines became a top global exporter. But, as historical records show, when the United States seized control of the Philippines, they choked off those global trade routes. Liberica essentially vanished from the world market, its booming economy completely wiped out by politics. Today, locals still drink this smoky, woody, wildly inconsistent bean. They actually call it Barako, which translates to tough guy.
And then there's Excelsa. For decades, everyone thought it was its own distinct species, but in 2006, researchers reclassified it as a Liberica variety. Honestly, coffee nerds totally lost their minds over this because the 2 taste absolutely nothing alike. Excelsa grows primarily in Southeast Asia and hits with a sharp, tart, super fruity punch. On its own, yeah, it can be a bit much, but in a blend, it adds incredible depth. Excelsa is basically the bass player of the coffee world. You might not actively notice it in the mix, but if you take it away, the whole song falls apart.
Section 3. Stolen seeds and mutations. Okay, every fancy single-origin coffee you've ever had traces back to one specific Arabica bean called Typica. It started in Yemen, moved to Java with Dutch traders, and then a single tree ended up in a greenhouse in Amsterdam. Here's where the story gets crazy. A French naval officer named Gabriel Declue literally stole a cutting from that exact tree. He smuggled it onto a ship, survived pirate attacks, physically stopped a crewmate from sabotaging it, and even shared his own limited drinking water with the plant just to keep it alive through a brutal storm. He finally made it to Martinique. From that one stolen, heavily traumatized plant, Typica spread across all of Central and South America. It yields very few beans, which makes it expensive, but it delivers an incredibly clean, sweet, and silky flavor.
Meanwhile, its sibling, known as the bourbon bean, had a completely different journey. French missionaries took Arabica seeds to a tiny, isolated island in the Indian Ocean called Bourbon, which we now know as Reunion. For 200 years, these plants just sat there, completely alone. Zero other coffee plants, zero cross-pollination. This intense isolation acted as a slow-motion time capsule, allowing the bean to independently evolve. The beans got rounder, sweeter, and developed these incredibly rich caramel and chocolate flavor notes that its parent plant never even had.
Section 4. The Premium Coffee World. $6,000. Yes, you heard that right. That staggering number is what a single pound of Gesha coffee went for at auction. And what's really incredible here is that nobody wanted this bean for 70 years. It was found growing wild in Ethiopia back in the 1930s, shuffled around various research stations, and ultimately ended up totally ignored on a farm in Panama. Then, in 2004, a farmer entered it into a tasting competition. The judges literally stopped writing, started arguing, and then began bidding against each other right there on the spot. Gesha had just broken the industry.
So, what's the hype? Well, geisha has these unmatched, super delicate notes of jasmine, bergamot, tropical fruit, and honey. It is completely unprecedented in the coffee world. It's so refined and delicate that adding anything to it is practically a crime. Honestly, if you put cream and sugar in a light roasted pour-over of geisha, you are for sure the kind of person who puts ketchup on a Wagyu steak.
But look, to prove that a crazy price tag doesn't dictate your coffee experience, let's talk about Ethiopian Yergachefi. This is your accessible entry point into premium flavor. Grown at high altitudes on tiny, hand-picked garden plots rather than massive industrial megafarms, it delivers this mind-blowing bright body with notes of lemon, blueberry, and florals. It drinks almost like a light tea. It flips your entire understanding of what coffee can actually taste like. And the best part is, you don't need $6,000 to experience it.
Of course, not all premium coffee is delicate and floral. We definitely have to respect the heavy hitters too. Take Sumatra mint hulling. Local farmers over there invented a process called wet hulling, where they basically strip the bean while it's still damp. It creates this bold, heavy flavor of dark chocolate, cedar, and damp earth with absolutely zero delicacy. It coats your mouth and just refuses to leave. And then we have Colombian Supremo. Perfectly balanced, medium body, nice and sweet. But did you know it actually became famous because of a con? Back in the 1950s, marketers completely invented a fictional farmer named Juan Valdez, gave him a donkey, and ran a marketing campaign so successful that an entire generation of Americans literally equated the word Colombian with good coffee. It was a brilliant trick that put it in almost every kitchen.
Section 5. Spotting Big Coffee Scams.
Let's look at Jamaica Blue Mountain. Grown in cool mists and rich volcanic soil, it is famous globally for being mild, clean, and incredibly smooth. But authentic Blue Mountain is exceptionally rare. Why is that? Well, because Japan quietly negotiated long-term contracts to buy up roughly 80% of the harvest before it ever even leaves the island. The rest of the world is left fighting over that tiny 20% sliver, which drives prices right through the roof.
And this brings us to probably the most important thing you'll learn today. Because beans like Jamaican Blue Mountain or Hawaiian Kona, which by the way only grows on a tiny 30-mile strip of volcanic soil, are so rare, companies use a massive legal loophole. If you see the word blend on the bag, like Kona Blend or Blue Mountain Blend, the law says it only requires 10% of the actual premium beans. That means the other 90%? It can just be cheap, mass-produced filler. Unless the bag specifically says 100% certified, you are paying top dollar for a cleverly marketed illusion.
Now, to make sure you get the absolute most out of whatever authentic bean you choose, take a screenshot of this beginner's brew guide right now. Matching your equipment to your bean is crucial. Delicate, sweet Arabicas and Typicas, they shine best with a slow V60 or pour-over so their sweetness can really develop. For the heavy, bitter, and earthy Robusta or Sumatran beans, you definitely want a French press or an espresso machine to handle that intense body. And for that rare, smoky Liberica, stick to the French press to capture all those wild, woody notes. Just remember to grind them fresh right before you brew, and the flavor will totally reward you.
So, with all this new knowledge about dancing goats, global histories, wild flavor profiles, and sneaky legal loopholes, I have a question for you. Go check your kitchen pantry right now. Look at the label, look for that 100% certification, and ask yourself, what are you actually drinking? Are you sipping a smooth Arabica, a heavy-hitting Robusta, or just 90% cheap filler hiding behind a really fancy name? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, stay curious and brew wisely.